Good evening and welcome to a special edition of The Breakdown. The Breakdown starts now. Welcome to the Trump's Not Invited edition of The Breakdown tonight. I'm Tara Setmayer. The Rick Wilson will be back next week. Big show. As we teased out earlier tonight, we are debuting a very explosive ad because this race in Virginia is getting very tight. It's 5 days away. I voted early today because I live in Virginia, and we felt it was important for people to understand what's really going on here. But before we get to all of that, a little preview. We also have a special guest, my good friend Glenn Kirschner. He's a legal analyst for MSNBC and a former federal prosecutor. He is here as promised to answer questions about the legalities of January 6th. We're going to dive deep into the Rolling Stone article about implicating members of Congress and talk a couple of other legal things going on. So make sure you send your questions to #AskTheBreakdown. And also, because it's a heavy show tonight, we're going to have a little fun at the end of the show. It's Halloween weekend coming up. Send us the pictures of your pumpkin carvings. It's a big deal in my house. We kind of go overboard with our pumpkin carvings every year. So we want to see yours. So send us also #AskTheBreakdown, any of your pumpkin carvings. And if we show it on the show, we'll send you some Lincoln Project swag. All right, back to business here. Like I said, we are 5 days away from this election in Virginia, and things are really tightening. And one of the wedge issues that is swinging this election is school board. There's school board arguments. There's this hyper focus on critical race theory, which does not exist in Virginia. It is not taught in Virginia schools, but Glenn Youngkin and the Republicans are using this issue. And we noticed, but so has Terry McAuliffe. He was speaking about it earlier this week.
I am sick of them talking about these issues of critical race theory. We do not teach critical race theory here in Virginia. It has never been taught. It is a racist dog whistle. It is pitting parents against parents, parents against teachers, and they're using our children as political pawns, and it has got to stop.
Why does that matter? Well, like I said, we noticed also, and it is a dog whistle. This here is the debut of Lincoln Project's The Truth About Critical Race Theory. Take a look.
Why is Glenn Youngkin suddenly talking about critical race theory?
Why do you think it is the issue to put your state back in Republican hands?
After all, it's not taught in Virginia schools. Not one. We'll tell you why. But first, let's turn the clock back a few years to Lee Atwater, a Republican operative who used race to win elections.
You start out in 1954 by saying by 1968 you can't say that. That hurts your backfire, so you say stuff like force busing, states' rights and all that stuff.
Like Atwater, Glenn is using coded language. Because in 2021, he can't get away with saying what he really wants to say. So if you see Glenn Youngkin talking about critical race theory,
Critical race theory, critical race theory.
make sure to let him know he's not fooling anyone.
Any way you look at it, race is coming on the back burner.
The Lincoln Project paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The truth hurts. This is 2021, and the Republican Party is still engaging in that old school racist Southern strategy. That's really what's going on here. And we want the Republicans to know, not only here in Virginia, but the Republicans who think that they're going to turn this into some issue in the midterms, we see you. Abe is watching, and we are calling this out for what it is. When you hear them going on and on about this red herring of critical race theory, let's remember the history and where that strategy came from. Why does this matter? Well, this matters because there is a certain amount of extremism that's going on that is being used in these elections. And it's not just with race, this whole idea of the others and pitting Americans against each other. Let's not forget Charlottesville, Virginia, is where that Unite the Rally Nazi rally happened, right? Jews will not replace us, tiki torches, a woman was killed. That happened here in Virginia. It is not by accident that critical race theory and this whole nonsense around it started here. So there's something else going on in Virginia that Lincoln Project has been getting involved in, and that has to do with Donald Trump. Because we all know, well, where Donald Trump stands on racism and race. We know he plays more than footsies with these people. And that's part of the reason why Glenn Youngkin doesn't want him here. He doesn't want Trump to come. And he's been trying to say, well, I'm Virginia first. We're going to focus on Virginians. But Donald Trump is itching to come. He can't stand the fact that he endorsed Glenn Youngkin, and Glenn Youngkin wants no parts of Donald Trump stepping foot in Virginia. Why? Because he is despised here in Virginia. And if he does, it's going to kill this momentum for Youngkin. So the Lincoln Project has been taunting him, and we have an ad that's out there. We'll play that a little later in the show. But we put a statement out that said, hey, Donald, you're too big of a coward to come to Virginia and campaign with Youngkin. Why did we do that? Because yesterday, Donald Trump puts a statement out talking about they're chanting, pro-Trump stuff in Arlington, Virginia, which is Northern Virginia, right outside D.C., and that he'll see them soon. I'm sure the Youngkin campaign gasped and went, "Oh my God, no! Please don't! They don't want him here." And I'm sure our ad, which is targeted to a audience of one down there in Palm Beach, it's sinking in. We're not the only ones. Lots of folks are taunting him, following our lead. And let's see if Donald Trump can keep it together. We're hearing Bloomberg is reporting that he's actually going to phone it in. He's going to phone in a rally for Youngkin on Monday, which is pretty sad. But Youngkin doesn't wants no parts of Donald Trump here in Virginia. And come on, Donald. I mean, you're the former president. Everyone loves you, don't they? No, they don't. He doesn't want you here. Why else doesn't he want him here? Well, because Donald Trump's presence reminds people of extremism in the Republican Party and conspiracy theories and all the wackadoodles that are empowered as a result of that now, as a result of Donald Trump. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but this has been making the rounds on social media lately. Here is a video of a Talking Point USA attendee. This is Charlie Kirk's organization, asking a really horrifying question.
We're living under a corporate and medical fascism. This is tyranny. When do we get to use the guns? No, and I'm not, that's not a joke. I'm not saying it like that. I mean, literally, where's the line? How many elections are they going to steal before we kill these people?
So,
what? When do we get to use the guns? And no, I'm serious. That's what he said. We saw what happened on January 6th. And these people are ginned up because of the Charlie Kirks of the world, because of the Fox Newses, because of the OANNs, because of all of these enablers who have taken the big lie and have taken the idea of Trumpism, and they have now weaponized this literally. We saw what they did on January 6th, which is why we continue to focus on this, which is why it's so important for people to stay engaged in the January 6th investigation and what the committee is doing and what's happening with the Justice Department, because this matters. These crazies are out there. If consequences and tough consequences are not handed down, they will do it again. They'll do it again. What else is going on? Why else? Glenn Youngkin doesn't want these people. He doesn't want people to associate him with this. Of course not, because this is crazy and dangerous and anti-democracy and illiberal. This is not what our country, that's tyranny, what those people are talking about. They're so misguided. Well, there's something else going on. No wonder they're all ginned up. Why? Well, our favorite Tuckums over there at Fox News, apparently he's got a documentary coming out because they are alleging that January 6th, they're so afraid of the truth coming out about January 6th that they're now alleging it's a false flag. Take a look at this preview for Tuckums Carlson's new documentary.
what you're about to see is part of our soon-to-be-released three-part series for Tucker Carlson Originals. It's called Patriot Purge. It debuts November 1st. Here's the trailer.
The domestic war on terror is here, is coming after half of the country.
The helicopters have left Afghanistan, and now they've landed here at home.
And the left is hunting the right, sticking them in Guantanamo Bay for American citizens, leaving them there to rot.
We are dealing with an insurgency in the United States.
Terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland.
I've been told that I'm a white nationalist.
That last person was Ali Alexander. You've heard Rick Wilson mention his name many times on this program about why this guy isn't in jail, why he hasn't been arrested. He was one of the main organizers of the Stop the Steal protest turned riot turned insurrection on January 6th. He'd been going around the country. He's the one that chanted, give us liberty or give us death, to crazy stuff. I mean, he's also implicated in this Rolling Stone article that we're going to talk about in a minute with Glenn Kirschner, as one of the people who was coordinating with members of Congress. He bragged about it on social media. This whole idea that turning around, it is, by the way, the Trump Justice Department also, the Trump FBI also said that white supremacy is the biggest domestic terrorist threat to the United States right now. So this is not something that was just made up. But these people and the conspiracy theories that they're putting forth, this is on the level of the 9/11 truthers. They are really trying to rewrite what we all saw with our own eyes and what's all over video. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary that Fox News would actually allow something like this to air on one of their channels. I believe it's only airing on their Fox Nation streaming service, but I don't care. It's a Fox brand. What are they doing? Really? Implying it's a false flag? Outrageous. Outrageous. Let's bring in Glenn Kirschner. I know he has some thoughts on this too. Glenn Kirschner is a former federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. He is a legal analyst for MSNBC and NBC. And he also has the Truth Matters YouTube channel. He's out there spitting truth, as we appreciate him doing every day, because we need folks like him doing that. It's a team effort. Glenn, welcome.
Hey, Tara, good to be with you.
I'm happy to have you back, my friend. I just want to get your reaction to the clips that we just showed of this guy talking about when do we get to use the guns, and Tucker Carlson now promoting this documentary implying that January 6th was a freaking false flag.
So I think there is a theme that runs through all of those stories you just laid out, Tara. Enforce the law and change the narrative. That's what the Department of Justice needs to do. Every day, the Department of Justice declines to punish Donald Trump for his crimes is another day the Department of Justice is punishing the American people, because we have to be subjected to what you just showed, right? When do we get to use the guns? We have to be subjected to the extreme, dangerous disinformation from Tucker Carlson and company. And it's all because the Department of Justice won't enforce the law to change the narrative. Every day, DOJ declines to prosecute Trump and his criminal associates is another day that those militia types that you just highlighted, their belief that they're right gets reinforced, and they become emboldened. And guess what? They're not out there selling guns. They're out there stockpiling guns, right? I don't care if you're the Proud Boys or the Boogaloo Boys or the Wolverine Boys or any of the little boy bands who feel big when they big and strong when they strap their semi-automatic long guns across their bellies. That's when they're feeling bold, right? They're being emboldened. Why? Because every day the Department of Justice declines to start indicting political criminals or criminal politicians is another day DOJ reinforces that apparently everything Donald Trump did was just fine. It was peachy, hunky-dory.
No consequences. They paid no price.
You've got to start bringing charges for the crimes that Donald Trump and company inarguably committed. Because if you don't follow the law and the evidence, and if you don't charge Donald Trump, then you're making a political decision to decline to charge Donald Trump. And then, I'm sorry, Merrick Garland is no better than Bill Barr, because Bill Barr made political decisions to weaponize the Department of Justice. He didn't follow the law and the facts. He used the department to punish Trump's perceived enemies and reward his friends and criminal associates. And now I feel like Merrick Garland's Department of Justice is falling into the same trap. They're not being governed by the law. They're being governed by politics.
Right. The pendulum has swung the other way, that they're so afraid of being accused of politicizing the Justice Department that they're actually doing a disservice to justice here, because they aren't taking the hard stance that they should and that the law justifies and that the Constitution, I think, demands that they do, because they're worried about it being politicized. We have been saying they need to throw caution to the wind here, because the justice system is on their side. The decision to go hard after these people is actually the right one, because otherwise, to your point, they look milquetoast and these people are getting more and more emboldened. And then we have the next iteration of a January 6th, which could be way, 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 way worse, because then when these incels who feel like big men with their guns across their chests and compensating for other shortcomings actually start to pull triggers like we saw with Kyle Rittenhouse, then you're going to have more of a body count. And that's what we're trying to avoid here.
Yeah, and if they don't prosecute Donald Trump, you know what Donald Trump's mantra will be? The Department of Justice told you all I did nothing wrong.
Right.
Everything I did has the Department of Justice stamp of approval on it. You know why? Because if it was a crime, they would have charged me. You know what?
That's right. That's what they said after.
Lose it all.
That's right.
I actually.
That's what they said after Mueller.
If we don't tackle this now, 2024 may very well be our last presidential election, and you will never. You know what will become extinct? A Republican concession speech, because they will never concede. They will say, we are disregarding the popular vote. We've got the laws now in the states that let the state legislatures override the popular vote. You'll never hear another Republican concede losing an election. They won't accept an election loss.
And by default, that means you'll never see another Democratic election, free and fair election in this country again. That's what happens. And that's what's at stake. That's why we do this every day. That's why we continue to hammer these points home, because that's literally what is at stake here. I use the example that, in the 1930s, when the Germans were voting for the Nazi Party and Hitler, they didn't think that he was really going to do any of those horrible things. They thought they were going to get roads and bridges and the trains were going to run on time. And, that he's not really going to do all that. And then what happened? Same thing with Czechoslovakia, and the same thing with, other countries there that voted and did not realize that what they were voting for may be their last free and fair election for 50 years, which is what happened with the Soviet states. So, this is the slow creep of authoritarianism that historians are warning us about. We're not just being alarmists here. History has shown us what happens. It's demonstrated what happens when you don't take these threats seriously. I want to ask you about Rolling Stone. And speaking of not taking the threat seriously enough, the Rolling Stone article that came out earlier this week, that the sources are supposedly folks who were organizers of the rally and the protests that are cooperating with the January 6th committee, that are kind of turning on some of the more radical elements of the January 6th insurrection, saying, yeah, we know, like the Ali Alexanders, he was coordinating with members of Congress. And they listed a bunch of members of Congress. Some of those names are not a shock to our audience: Gohmert, Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Boebert, Andy Biggs, Mo Brooks. Glenn, should the Justice Department be bringing these guys up on criminal charges or starting an investigation? Do we need a special counsel? How much more do we need to show that these members of Congress were violating the law?
Yeah, I don't understand how there can't be criminal investigations open, up, and running into these members of Congress. It only takes a little bit of evidence that somebody may have violated a law of the United States. The fancy term is adequate predication.
Right.
Very little evidence, little more than a hunch or a suspicion in the FBI manual. So when we see all of this evidence of criminal complicity by members of Congress, I don't understand how the FBI and the Department of Justice can walk away from its responsibility to open criminal investigations. And I actually think we're creeping toward a little something called accessory after the fact, because if you know a crime has been committed against the United States in violation of our federal laws, and you do anything to assist the offender in avoiding apprehension, trial, or punishment, guess what? You're an accessory after the fact. You have law enforcement authorities who are duty bound to investigate. And if they don't, for political reasons, I'm sorry, but then you have to look at the federal code and the accessory after the fact crime and begin to think about how can we go about enforcing the laws? Because Tara, we're not going to ask the question, when do we get to use our guns and kill people? We're not going to do it, right?
Exactly.
But when do we get to use the laws? When the law enforcement authorities refuse to do so for political reasons? That's a tough question to answer. But going back to Congress, we look at a perfect example of how short-sighted these members of Congress are. You talk about how once we've gone to a dictatorship and autocracy, there's no safe quarter, including for the Republicans who are voting to give congressional power away. 202 Republicans voted against enforcing their own dang subpoena by referring Steve Bannon for criminal prosecution. I called him the treasonous 202, right?
That's nice.
Do they think that if Donald Trump is installed as a dictator, he's going to have the time of day for a co-equal legislative branch of government?
Right.
These people are so short-sighted in their zeal to retain power and thereby retain wealth. They're voting against their own interests in the long term. So, but it's not a surprise, because as Rolling Stone made perfectly clear, members of Congress were complicit in the insurrection, in the run-up to it, in the execution of it, and I'm betting in the cover-up, because the cover-up will get you every time. And so there better be investigations into these people being conducted by the FBI right now, because if the Rolling Stone can get this evidence, then by gosh, the FBI ought to have this evidence.
Exactly, which leads me to, why in the hell is Steve Bannon still not indicted? We've got a Steve Bannon indictment watch going on here. What are we up to now? 9 days? 8 days? How long has it been?
Today is day 7. I've been posting it every day on Twitter. I think today is day 7 of the Bannon indictment watch. And here's the beauty of where we are with Steve Bannon right now. We have actual precedent for this exact circumstance. Congress criminally referring somebody to the DC U.S. Attorney's Office, my former home, the DC U.S. Attorney's Office indicting that person for contempt of Congress and going to trial. The person's name is Rita Lavelle. She was a Reagan-era EPA official. She was found in contempt and referred to the DC U.S. Attorney's Office for prosecution. 9 days later, she was indicted, and they took her to trial. We're on day 7. And Merrick Garland, don't tell me you need to have more legal analysis or legal navel gazing or more meetings to discuss whether Steve Bannon should be indicted for the crime he committed, contempt of Congress. Because you know what? Now you see what Mark Meadows is doing? He's starting to back up. I don't know. I'm not so interested in cooperating with the Select Committee.
Yep.
And, if you don't indict Steve Bannon, if you don't sort of validate the power of the congressional subpoena, then you're announcing to all future witnesses, don't comply, we've got your back.
That's exactly right. And that is something that all of us who've been screaming from the rooftops, use the levers of power available to you, because Republicans wouldn't hesitate. They would have thrown him in the clink by now if it had been the other way around. They would have used inherent contempt of Congress. They would have done all of those things. And I don't know what else to say to Democrats, warning them, because all of us here at the Lincoln Project, we were all worked for these kinds of people. We've been there. We've seen what they're capable of at some some point. I was on the Hill during Benghazi. I saw what they did. I saw what they did to Eric Holder. Like, I don't know how much more it's going to take for them, because it's clear that these people are thumbing their nose at them. They're mocking them. Steve Bannon is mocking. He's daring them to come and get him. Go and fucking get him.
And my two favorite words you just used in combination: inherent and contempt.
Yeah.
Because look, yes, criminal referral is great, but what is criminal referral designed to do? Punish somebody for being in contempt of Congress.
Exactly.
What is inherent contempt designed to do? Compel testimony. Go out and get Steve Bannon, exercise your lawful constitutional power of inherent contempt, sit his butt in a jail cell at 119 D Street, Northeast Washington, D.C., Capitol Police Headquarters. 4 perfectly good cells have been cleaned out, ready to be occupied, and he sits there until he testifies and purges the contempt. Because if Congress doesn't take off the gloves, they're still wearing the darn gloves as democracy burns. If they don't take off the gloves, how are we going to feel when we look at America's headstone at the end of our democracy and it says, well, at least the Dems didn't violate norms and traditions. Rest in peace, America. How are we going to feel if that's how America's headstone reads?
Amen to that. You heard it here, Glenn Kirschner. We don't want that to ever come to fruition. We don't want to see that headstone. Do we need a special counsel? Our mutual friend Asha Rangappa tweeted out a thread about this, weighing the pros and cons, and when people hear special counsel, that used to be few and far between, right? That was very rarely used. And it's become, I think some people, speaking of norms and institutions, are worried that it's being used as a political weapon. But she makes a pretty compelling case. Maybe we need a special counsel.
Yeah, special counsel can be used as an apolitical weapon, not a political weapon.
It should be.
So, and I saw Asha's terrific tweet, and I think I retweeted her, and I've seen Lawrence Tribe weigh in favor of a special counsel, and Allison Gill had a good string. I think that's where we are, and I'm loath to advocate for a special counsel for a couple of reasons. One, the Department of Justice should be up to this task. Donald Trump is a federal problem. We need a federal solution by way of a federal indictment from our Department of Justice, reinforcing the importance and the value and the vibrancy of the rule of law. But if we have to take a special counsel because, that person and that team can be tasked with focusing like a laser beam on Donald Trump's crimes, so be it. My concern is then they're going to have to start from jump, and this could be a 2, 3, 4-year endeavor. We're burning democracy daylight here, and I want to see the Department of Justice move out and prosecute Donald Trump for his crimes. But you know what? If they're unwilling or unable to do it, let's go the special counsel route.
I think the, your argument that the Justice Department hasn't moved and they haven't done this enough is, I think, why so many legal minds are starting to look at other alternatives of ways to get around that, because it seems pretty clear that they're worried a little bit about the political side of going after these people, which they need to stop. They just need to stop. You get a special counsel, it takes that away, but it also takes it out of the public sphere for a while, because then no one can comment publicly on things. And there are implications for that too, because you don't want the American people to forget about it. So, well, I don't know.
But the good news is, if they appoint special counsel, then we know Trump and company are being criminally investigated. We may not know the progress that's being made. Bob Mueller was famously tight-lipped. His investigation was like a vault. Nothing came out of it, but we all knew he was investigating.
Right.
And then the indictment started to come. So at least, because right now we're all scratching our head, is Merrick Garland really not investigating the crimes that have been committed in the harsh light of day? I can't conceive of that as a former career prosecutor.
Right. Before we go, I wanted to ask you about something that's happening here in Virginia, because it's relevant to the Virginia governor's race that's happening. Glenn Youngkin is going to Charlottesville, of all places, tomorrow, I believe, which I just think is rather tacky, but he's going there, and we all know what happened in 2017. And there's currently a trial going on for some of those Unite the Right rally protesters, rioters, what do we want to call them? They were, and it's my understanding that they're being prosecuted under a potential statute from like the 1800s that has to do with the Ku Klux Klan. Can you talk a little bit about what's happening in Charlottesville, and will there be justice there? What are they being prosecuted under?
Yeah, so that's a civil case. They're not being criminally prosecuted, but there are a bunch of plaintiffs, by and large, people who were injured by the, tiki torch carrying, khaki wearing, racist anti-Semites. It's not really going to be all that tough to prove that their conduct was motivated by a determination to deprive people of their rights based on race, religion, ethnicity. I mean, for gosh sakes, they were chanting, "Jews will not replace us."
Right.
That's a dead giveaway, right? So this is,
But there was good people on both sides, though, Glenn.
That's what Donald Trump wants us to believe.
Jeez.
That it is being brought. It's being the civil case was brought under the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. It basically says if people conspire to deprive others of their civil rights based on race, religion, ethnicity, then they can be successfully sued. Now, mind you, a handful, I think 7 or 8 defendants have already had default judgments entered against them because they either didn't appear or they went broke in the process and they're not defending themselves. There are some really important buckets of evidence that will be introduced at this trial. It's a very strong, I think, case for the plaintiffs and a really weak case for the defendants. I mean, you've got the videos but there's going to be lots of picking and choosing and the selective display of certain clips to make it look like one side was the first aggressor, the other side was defending itself. But you've got the statements, the chatter on Discord, where these people were saying to one another, "Go to Charlottesville, we'll be wild, wear your boots." Where have we heard "go somewhere, we'll be wild" before? Echoes of January 6th and Donald Trump. You had people saying, "We're looking forward to cracking skulls." You actually had talk about plowing cars into groups. So this is, I think, a strong case, which they did. And they didn't just kill Heather Heyer. They injured a whole rack of people. We had fractured skulls. We had broken legs. So these are the people who are now suing for monetary damages. And they're suing to try to deter this kind of conduct from unfolding in the future. So it's going to take about a month for this trial to unfold. And I think we ought to keep our eyes on it.
That is, people forget that I think that case, that incident in Charlottesville, again, was something that we didn't see, weren't punished enough for. And you see how it emboldened those groups. They got more and more in your face, and it culminated with January 6th. And so I'm hoping that there is swift justice for those folks in Charlottesville, both criminally and civilly, because these people don't understand anything other than force. So thank you so much, Glenn. I want to give you final words. People, tell folks about Justice Matters and where they can find you and where they can get this scorched earth truth telling from Glenn Kirschner all the time besides Twitter.
Yeah, so every day I post a legal analysis video on my YouTube channel, Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner, trying to unpack an issue of the day and give people information that they can use kind of moving forward in their own lives and making their own decisions about what they're seeing reported. People can also come over to Patreon. We have a group of what we call Team Justice, and we have pro-democracy projects that we put together and we deploy. We do that over on Patreon. You can become a formal member of Team Justice and help us out. We also have annual Team Justice get-togethers. We just had one in DC a couple of months ago, which is my way to say thank you to everybody who comes over on Patreon and supports our all-volunteer efforts, our mission, and our content. So those are 2 good places where you can find our work.
I appreciate that, and we appreciate all the work you're doing. Support Glenn Kirschner and his Team Justice efforts. Glenn, you are welcome back anytime, my friend.
Thank you, Tara.
All right. Glenn always brings it. And that it's important to hear it from people. I mean, he spent 30 years prosecuting crimes in Washington, D.C. at a federal level. So he, when Glenn speaks, I listen. He's a smart guy and doesn't play around. So before we end the show tonight, I have some housekeeping. There is a Lincoln Project Town Hall tonight at 8 o'clock. If you want to hear from Stuart Stevens and Steve Schmidt, and our own We're Speaking's Maya May is moderating. We have a link. You can sign up for a little donation. You get to watch and listen, and I think ask questions too. It's starting at 8 o'clock. You can still sign up for it. So check out our town hall tonight. And also, I wanted to lighten it up a little bit because it's been a heavy show. We've been talking about Nazis and we've talked about race theory and the N-word and all these kinds of things. Let's lighten it up a little bit as we end the show. First of all, I voted today. I should have put my I voted sticker on, but if you are in Virginia, please, 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 there's still time for you to go out there. You can vote early. They've made it much easier this year. The election is on Tuesday. So please, if you're in Virginia, make sure you go out there and vote. Also, it is Halloween weekend approaching. And as I said at the top of the show, we go a little overboard in my house. We're very celebratory people. We do stuff during the holidays. If you guys followed me last year, you saw we turn our house into Christmas Wonderland. You see, I decorate my set according to the season. Well, we like to carve pumpkins, and we usually have a theme. And we had a bunch of you guys send some of your pictures in, so we'll post those later. But here is some from our carvings. That is my husband doing the Mortal Kombat theme. There's Tiki. Tiki's around here somewhere. There's Tiki Cat. I carved that one. Our theme was retro 80s and 90s arcade games this year. So if you see, we did Pac-Man and his ghosts. We've got Mortal Kombat, and we've got Ghostbusters as well, because it's the new movie's coming out, and who doesn't love Ghostbusters? So there it is. That's some examples of our pumpkin carvings. If you go to my Instagram, the music that accompanies is there also. And thank you for sending in some of your pumpkin carvings. We're going to retweet them, and the ones that we retweet, you guys will get some Lincoln Project swag. So thank you very much for that. And as we leave tonight, our final parting shot to Donald Trump. Donald, come on, there's still a couple days left, I mean, are you going to show up, or is Glenn Youngkin going to tell you stay away? We really don't want you. I don't know. Well, here's our ad playing down in Palm Beach to take you out tonight. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday for our election night coverage.
Oh, Donald, it's happening again. You made Glenn Youngkin.
President Trump endorsed me the next day.
Without you, he was nothing.
You gave him power. And I thanked him for it.
That's why Glenn Youngkin has banned you from coming to Virginia.
He used you.
He thinks you're a loser, and you'll make him one too.
You are not welcome.
He's embarrassed of you. He wants you to stay away.
Not invited.
Far away.
Loser.
Glenn Youngkin, just another rhino stabbing you in the back.
They're ashamed of you.
The Lincoln Project paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Good night, everybody.